Because I would imagine, it's a super common thing, people who do cocaine, to take the edge off with things that shut them down. I mean, it's how a lot of people actually die is they take speedballs. Yeah. So there's a good chance that they were on something that made them crash
really hard. Yeah, you'll be up for like hours, maybe days, if you stay wound up, and then you really just, you crash really hard. And that fit everything. That fit the party, the 420 party the night before and everything. It just fit it.
Warning. The podcast you're about to listen to may contain graphic descriptions of violent assaults, murder, and adult language. Listener discretion is advised.
The Lexington Triple Homicide. Who really pulled the trigger? Part 3 of 3.
He did say that he reloaded before he shot the second guy.
I don't buy that. Yeah, because he would have woke up the first guy.
Yeah, exactly.
So, were they sleeping side by side, or
no?
In
Two different rooms. They were roomies, and but but again, I'd have to dig deeper into the file, and we can only get so much of those files in open records request anyway, to count how many rounds we believe were fired at the house with some margin for missing something compared to the shell casings, the amount of shell casings were found back at the apartment. But it was strong enough for the prosecutor laid into that very hard. She took that as a running theory, and I was like, wow, you're smarter than I am.
But it does make you wonder how the one boy didn't hear the other boy getting shot.
Well,
unless he was passed out or something.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. And I believe Ricky moved really quick. I mean, let's think about that, is that he probably didn't spend a lot of time at this. So it's because by his own statement is they were both out when he walked up on him. So is that was the case there. So that's pretty much the bones of it. Is there anything before we get into the trials? Because the trial thing is pretty interesting in and of itself too. When you take somebody, we'll talk about what the theory was again, and we'll talk about what the trial was, and the verdict was not what we expected, but I think we had a grasp as to why the jury might have won there.
You covered everything from what I can think. But you,
I think so. I did want to know how the one didn't hear the other.
Yeah, we did too.
They weren't asleep.
It
they
just
were unconscious.
Seems like, they had to be unconscious. That would be seemingly loud. Were they shot multiple times, each boy?
One, I think, if I remember correctly, one of them was shot twice. But again, I'm really going by an ancient memory on that.
Yeah, I'm assuming no blood work was done on them for seeing what was in their system.
And we'd have to see the toxicology. Because
I would imagine, it's a super common thing, people who do cocaine, to take the edge off with things that shut them down. I mean, it's how a lot of people actually die is they take speedballs. Yeah. So there's a good chance that they were on something that made them crash
really hard. Yeah, you'll be up for like hours, maybe days, if you stay wound up, and then you really just, you crash really hard. And that fit everything. That fit the party, the 420 party the night before and everything. It just fit it. Just a sad case. Yeah. I remember one thing. It's funny when you think about these and you do look back, the stuff you don't remember. But I remember one day I was on the phone with a Herald Leader reporter. I think her name was Pat. Loved her. She worked really good with us. She was on the phone with me, and she was walking up to the door of, I think, Aaron's house to talk to the parents. And I listened to the mother or grandmother throw her out of the house and off the porch.
Oh, wow.
Screaming. What it was is they ran an article, and I might try to find them and put them on our website, the copies of the articles, and they had the pictures of the boys. And they had some of their criminal history involvement, which, again, this was all petty stuff. This was like, the guys like that grow out of that most of the time, and they become good people. Like most people make mistakes. But they ran that, and that family was livid. They were livid, which is understandable. But I remember Pat Kimbrough, I think I loved her. I don't know what she does now. But I mean, and I was like, she's mad, and I think I even said, I'm getting off the phone before she yells at me, so. But that's that rawness in people when they lose somebody like that.
Sure.
And I remember one of the grandfathers of one of the boys, I used to go over to the Gibson trailer park where he lived and just to talk to him sometimes. And, you know, and because the follow-up is you're coming back to people and everything. But for me, it was important that when you could to spend a little bit of time with them there and outside the courtroom, because that whole court thing is just foreign to them as to what's going down and why things are going. Tragedy there. I've said it before. Just I still to this day think of his mother and think of his sister and the rest of the family. I still think about his child and what that child's doing right now and doesn't have any answers, because we're gonna get to it in a minute as to what happened in trial and after trial and stuff like that, about some of the last parts of that tragedy that just drive you crazy about this. Well, you end up, so you've got him in custody. You're processing those things in the background. You're doing the honey-do list from the Commonwealth Attorney's Office. That's where they're putting their 2 cents in and ask you to finish up the interviews. It doesn't stop after the arrest. We've talked about that before. But when they go to trial, and of course we've arrested him, we end up getting indictments for all 3. You know, you go to a preliminary hearing within 10 days, and all that does is establish probable cause to continue holding them. And sometimes there's a bond motion. We did have a hearing. It was kind of weird that it was bizarre that a lot of times on my murder cases is they'd waive preliminary hearings, and you would think that they would go for them a lot. And it was my experience that the defense attorneys did lots of preliminary hearings on drug cases. But I think what it was is, and I think this was for all of us in the unit, in the relationship we had to defense attorneys. If your documentation, your first adult, what we call the adult case summary, if that was squared away, and there's actually a mutual trust between you and the defense attorneys and the prosecutors, sometimes it's better to waive and go to the grand jury, because you don't know what's going to come out at the preliminary hearing and do that. In this case, we did have a preliminary hearing, and I remember I got crossed by a fantastic defense attorney. We talked about Kate Dunn. Some people didn't like Kate, but because Kate would rip you pretty good, but that's what she's supposed to do. Right. If Kate had a new cop, that's how she broke them in. There's an old saying that a thoroughbred can smell sneakers. Kate could smell if you were new, and she'd leave a piece of your ass behind that stand. So I remember when we were doing it, is she's crossing me, and it gets into that thing a little bit, nothing overly heated. But I do remember at one point when, and this is not throwing shade at Kate, but when I said, well, he did an interview, and she said, what'd he say? And I leaned in, I said, he said he did it, and he's glad he did it, and he'd do it again. And if he were standing in front of him, he'd skin him alive. And she goes, no further. And we waved. But you love people like that. She's amazing. I'd love to have her on this show. Yeah. But so you have the preliminary hearing, and then within I think it's a 60-day rule, or 60 or 90. I think it's 60. Then it goes in front of a grand jury, and we've talked about what a grand jury is. That's a group of people who get jury duty, which Wendy didn't get to.
I didn't get to do jury duty.
She got called in a couple years ago.
I have to interject and say, I'd never been called. We can't even keep this in the show. This is how devastated I was.
Yeah. I've never seen anybody that excited about grand jury duty. I was so proud
that I was going to get called. And
well, let me tell you about you not sitting on a jury. Justice got served that day.
In Jessamine County, you're on it for a 6-month spree there. And so, they text in to tell you like numbers and there was so many people there, a couple hundred people there. And so if your number gets called, then you have to go and see if you're going to be chosen. And my number got called 3 times. And each time I came back with my head hung low because I didn't get chosen.
Like it's an audition.
I was so excited. Yeah. I just knew that I was going to go in there, and it was going to be like sitting here on the show. I was just going to hear it, and it was going to be fun. And I was devastated every time. I never got chosen.
Justice prevailed.
I'm just
going to say it prevailed.
It must have.
Well, let's divert back to that the grand jury that she didn't get to sit on.
That's right.
That's just people like you and I that go in and they hear the case presented by the prosecutor and the witnesses, and it's there to validate probable cause. It's not a trial. There's no cross-examination. It's very rare that a defendant will appear, and if I remember correctly, the prosecutor has to allow him. I've seen it happen. I've seen defendants go in before. and he gets indicted on all three. Now you're into the long game of waiting for trial. There's hearings, there's suppression hearings, this is why you get a warrant for houses, is that a good attorney is going to take everything that we do and turn it upside down. Speaking of that, where this got complicated is that they moved on this as a capital murder case.
Oh.
Because one of the aggravators is the multiple victim thing in Kentucky. Based on that is he was represented by DPA, or the Department of Public Advocacy. And it's kind of like legal aid on steroids. Unfortunately, they probably have more resources than some local legal aids. Super passionate attorneys that are really in there for the game, which they should be if you're going to do that. Yeah. And they're kind of like the cavalry when you have a capital case, because they specialize in that. And so when you get that, it is all the defenses I ever saw were really magnificent, but this one was a fine-tooth comb. It was one of the few times I saw like chain of custody hearings, which are really rare. Again, if you're a police department and you handle your evidence really good and you've got a good system, it's hard to poke holes into that to say that there's a chance for something to be screwed with or whatever. In this case, it meant spending a lot of time with the DPA attorneys, where you meet them at headquarters in the evidence room, and every item of evidence gets examined. They get to look at it, glove up, paper out. And then this is exhausting, but you go into a hearing and they test the chain of custody on every time that evidence got handled, which means
more evidence.
Yeah.
More.
Whoever saw it, whoever found it, whoever bagged it, whoever marked it, whoever photographed it, if I hand it to you and you date and time it and put your initials, you come to the stand next and say, David handed it to me. They did that with virtually every piece of evidence, and there were hundreds of items of evidence in this case. So you don't see that very often. We survived all of that because I think we had a really good way of doing it. But that's how effective this counsel is. I mean, some people call them vicious, but again, if you and I needed an attorney, you're going to want the top dog and the people that. By the way, it's not about money; it's about they're passionate. So DPA they're an affordable person to meet in court. I mean, they're affordable.
This is a slight diversion, but I got two new related questions. One, if he was sentenced for capital punishment in Kentucky, what would be the cause of execution, like the form of execution?
The form of execution, we just talked about this in an interview last night. Right now, Kentucky has left Old Smoky some time ago, and it's lethal injection. But there was a stay on lethal injection in 2010 out of Franklin Circuit Court. So that's on hold. Is that it's an issue based on the circuit court judge that ruled a stay in a death row inmate. The inmate was getting very close to being put to death. I think he had like a two-pronged argument. One was some clarification in language between the statute and the law on how the chemicals are mixed or how many you can have, and then that there didn't seem to be a lot of clarity on protection for mentally disabled or insane defendants or inmates. Something to that. So right now we're not doing it, but the method would be.
That brings me to part two of that question. Who makes the determination in places where it could be multiple forms of execution? Like, who decides how?
That's a good question. That's in the news right now. Yeah, because there's a case where, and I feel bad I don't have the state, but it's an option. You get to pick your poison.
I kind of like that.
Yeah, you can pick. I think in this state, I think it's lethal injection or firing squad.
See, that's the one I would go with.
Yeah, well, and the guy picked the firing squad. Now that brings up all of those things. We had a really good philosophical with the person we just interviewed because his grandparents were murdered by some guys that are on death row. And those are incredible conversations to get into as to – because look at it philosophically. If it was me, which one do I want? And whatnot. So but if we were performing them in Kentucky, it would be lethal injection. But there's been a stay since for 15 years now on that. And that'll keep miring its way through court. So getting back to that throws it into high gear. And I don't want to say that other people don't get represented well, because they generally do, especially in this town. The defense attorneys, whether they're legal aid or private, are amazing people that I got to work with. The same people that would cross-examine me pretty hard I just loved them. They were just good people. So we're on our way. We're inbound with that. We've got a capital case. The odds are up on that. Gets a lot of media attention, of course, because it's like that. And then you're inbound for trial. And in trial, I remember it's like anything else. Ricky was dressed up, brought in a Bible. Those are handy. That happens a lot. That happens a lot. I mean, everybody looks a lot better at trial than they did.
He found the Lord.
He did. Yeah. He did. Probably in that hotel room next to the Mormon Bible.
I think so. While he was eating
I'm pretty sure that was provided by those attorneys.
The Gideons probably. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. But it's laugh like but it's true. I mean, it's part of that thing of how do I brand my client in front of this jury. I'll just say this because I do remember in closing arguments when the DPA attorneys did make a very biblical statement, and I bit my lip a little bit when I listened to it, but that was okay too because I'm not so sure he believed what he was saying, but he's doing everything he can for his client. Let's be really clear on that. So getting back to it, we went in and hit him with the 3 because the principal things were is all 3 of the victims were killed with the same .38 caliber revolver. That's physical evidence with some circumstantial tint to it, but it's the same weapon. The gun was found with Ricky. Now when alone that means little, but in circumstantial evidence is that you start to look at the totality of the circumstances. Is that same weapon? He has that gun, and it's found with him. It's not anywhere else. The ballistics testing confirmed that everybody was killed from the same firearm. That was pretty clear. You had the fact that GSR wasn't located on Aaron and Isaac with any margin of questioning on that. It's still an important part.
Sure.
I have to be fair and say that I'm pretty sure I can't recall finding it on Ricky. But I know that's it. And I know it sounds like I'm arguing both sides of the court, but that's what's wrong with it is the time passing. And there were times of time we went to people who were like kind of a little bit of a focus, and you'd meet them and they'd be the sink like this, and it'd be like, well, goodbye to that. But it's the same reason. I don't know if y'all know it, but like if we find somebody that's deceased, a lot of one of the common practices you paper bag their hands and at their wrist, and you protect all that so that it doesn't get messed up. So that's that. So we had all of those things. We had the couple of slight slips up in his statement to us a little bit, and then just the motive made more sense. The motive. In part, Wendy, I think, is because there wasn't any kind of a plan after that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
There wasn't a whole lot. There was like, am I going to go call my mom? Am I going to turn myself in? Am I going to go any of those number of things? There was nothing that we could see in that too. So I think that was it. So you go to trial. Several days. One thing about Kentucky that's unique is that murder trials don't take as long as they do in California or anywhere. 2 weeks is probably a pretty good run. 2 weeks. They just don't. They're kind of an in and out. And a lot of people testified. A lot of his friends, a lot of the family, the girlfriend testified, and a jury goes out. Now, when a jury goes out, you're waiting to see and everything. And I can't remember how long they were out. I stayed for all the jury verdicts, even if we went into 3 a.m. I didn't believe in doing that. And when the jury came back, they came back and they found him guilty of killing the 2 boys and found him not guilty of killing Frank.
Wow.
Yeah. And there's a part of you like that. That's your first thing is like, for me, and I think the people I worked with is like, you could use the word disappointed. But I think that when we were talking with the Commonwealth attorney about it, is that we felt very strongly about those things. But keep in mind that the same thing that makes a defendant's confession powerful in court, their words become powerful. And it's not codlocked, but think about it for a minute. He gave us a statement.
Yeah.
And he gave us a rationalization of why that would happen. And again, the burden of guilt is on proof beyond a reasonable doubt. And you can, if you look at how hard it is for a jury to make that decision, you can kind of get that. And then the other thing that can go on in a jury room is they can look at it and talk, and they can see how crummy all this is. And don't take this lightly, but they can say they probably disagree. They probably had the most debate. Obviously, was going to be on Frank.
Sure.
And when they deliberated, it might have been kick him on the 2,
Yeah.
You got him on 2. He's going away. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That happens in jury rooms.
Another psychological observation: could he have gotten capital punishment for just 2, or did it have to be all 3?
I'd have to look at the law. This is when I wish we had Ray the DA with us.
Well, just thinking, if I was on the jury, would I be comfortable putting somebody away for life for a crime I know they did versus dying for something that I'm not totally sure?
What a good thought. That's why I'm glad you're here. It is, there's that, because I have talked to people that have been on capital cases. I've actually spoken to people that were on a case that I led that resulted in 2 death penalties in one crime. And they talked about that. And we had a guest on here that was in a capital murder jury as a juror, and she talked. That weight is incredible.
I can't imagine. Yeah. I would not envy that.
Yeah. And so, I think that's a good rationalization there too, because it's going to be based on the multiple killings. And of course, then he had some other felonies in conjunction of robbery and theft and stuff like that. So you know what? I'll have to look, and maybe for the listeners, you'll catch me. If y'all want to research it and put it on YouTube, let us know. I'll have to look. I've been out of the game a little bit on that, on how many that is. But what a great philosophical question.
Thank you.
Is that I know that if I sat in a jury in a case like that, that would be very heavy. Despite any experience that I've got, that's heavy. And like the guest we just interviewed, we were talking, if you're going to put somebody in prison for 5 years, that's heavy. Every bit of this is a heavy thing. That's, again, I respect jurors so much. And I'm not crazy about people that try to dive jury duty. I
got out of jury duty once, but I had midterms. So.
Oh, well, that's different. Yeah. Okay, you're all right. Exactly. I mean, that's a reason, but some people just
people
do it.
are getting out of it, and I was breaking
Trying
my
to
neck
get into it. Yeah.
Again, justice prevails. So you've got that, and again, back to Wendy, where you went, is what's it like to be his mom?
Right.
To lose Frank. And I can't speak for her, but I think that she probably wondered. I mean, like, come on, but even if that one, if you didn't, your own blood has admitted to taking the lives of 2 people, and there could be a rationalization and a defense in that too. And everybody loses. We lose Frank, we lose the 2 boys, we lose Aaron and Isaac, we lose Ricky's child doesn't have a father present. His sister loses her brother. I mean, when you're gone away, you're gone away. And if I remember correctly, it was life without. I feel bad for not seeing that, but I'm pretty sure that it was like the max on that, which is the next thing people will come to on that. I don't think it was 25, but the defense had argued extreme emotional disturbance to some extent, which is what I'd go with too. I mean, sure. and that probably led to it too, because in Kentucky, if you lean to extreme emotional disturbance, then it paints a better picture for watching your stepdad get killed and then taking that action on other people.
What was the argument that really kind of went against that? Do you think the empty pockets was probably
that's it. You see, then you start running into a different motive with manipulation, and though he didn't have a long-term plan, because what we want to try to believe with extreme emotional disturbance is it's not insanity, but it's heat of the moment in flagrante. You walk in and catch your
involve reloading and then running off with a weapon. And money.
Exactly. Ordering a pizza.
Watching from the
exactly. That was comforting.
Oof.
But it's just bizarre on how that goes down. And again, I'm pretty sure they maxed him pretty high on the sentence on that. They kind of walked away from the EED, but so many things go on in that jury room that. But that's our system too. So that's the other thing too. Is you can't throw a crying towel over that. When you go to trial, it is it. I mean, that's what we all believe in, and you accept that result. And that jury really worked hard. There's no doubt in my mind they worked really hard. I think as far as who he is that, you look at his personality and stuff like that. I think antisocial. I'm not a psychologist, but you said it.
Me neither, but I think he's a sociopath.
Yeah, exactly. You got to be able to do that. I mean, it's hard. I think the drug induced thing is really a part of that too. In Kentucky, it's drug involvement isn't really what we would call a mitigator. So you can't really apply that as a defense successfully. You can take a shot at it, and they will, but really it's like the law in Kentucky doesn't really give a lot of weight to that, and you might as well go in and say that it was devil worship, and you'll have as much luck. That would be one for your show.
There we go.
Exactly. The EED, the extreme emotional disturbance, that would have been it. I think that would have been the one with the attorneys that I would have pushed the button on the hardest because it fits.
Yeah.
It's just like that case right now with that in Pulaski County where the sheriff killed the judge. Is I saw where they plan on pleading insanity, but I'm like, they'll go with the ED when it's over with. They'll go with the ED.
That makes sense.
But who knows what lurks in his mind? So he gets sentenced and he goes off, and everybody loses him. The last tragedy. Do you want the last tragedy?
I've been waiting for you to say it.
He's sentenced. He's sent off to prison in LaGrange, Kentucky, and then we get word one day that in December of 2004, Ricky took his own life while he was in custody. Which again, some people might say, well, he's got it coming or whatever, but justice has been served. He's sentenced. He's housed, right? I mean, that's what this is about. And one more time for his mom and his sister and the rest of the family, what do you do with that? Is that he's any shot of him having relationships with his child or talking to them again is done. It's just like I said, so much on the hearts and the weights of a handful of people is just incredible. It shocked us, so don't have any idea why he did it.
Yeah, I'm just curious, with so many lives damaged by this, the people closest to him, where are they now? Do you keep tabs on any of them? No,
you don't. It with a lot of victims' families, you don't. And this one would have been difficult too, just because of the dynamics. There's very few people that I really know where they're at and what they've been into over the years. I guess my hope would be that somehow they've metabolized some of this and that they found a peace somewhere with it to be able to go on with their lives. I mean, that's what we would hope for anybody, because innocent bystanders. Yeah. Innocent bystanders. They had no knowledge or anything to do with what that happened and everything. But I guess my hope would be wherever they're at, that they've landed in a better place. That would be my hope.
That's a good sentiment.
Well, guys, it was great learning about David, your case, and James sitting down with you. And again, thank you for coming. And our listeners, check out the 13th Floor.
Thanks for having me.
You'll get to hear more of James's neat podcast with his two sidekicks, and you'll get to name his next fighter.
Yeah. Keep your eye out for the polls on Instagram for that one.
Yeah, for sure. Got to go do that too. And again, happy birthday to CC.
Happy birthday.
We'll definitely make sure we kick that in and tell them we said hi. And thanks for letting me ramble through this. I'll finish with one thing. That's why when you testify in court, you have those huge binders in front of you, because there's no way you remember all these things. So there was a few gaps and everything.
You've come a long way from something this thin, haven't you?
Oh, yeah.
Compared to what you've had.
Oh, yeah. They are 3-inch binders and multiple of them. But hopefully, again, I think it's a neat case to talk about because of all the tragedy involved in it and the lives that it touched. And it touched all of ours. You don't get around these things without having a lot of compassion for that family and the families of the two boys and the lives that were ruined with that too. So thank you again, James. Really appreciate it. Hopefully we can do something with you guys one day. We'll come up with a topic or whatever. We'd love to cross into you. We just have to find something freaky enough for the 13th floor.
We'll get it done for sure.
Good deal.
It'll be great to have you on.
Good deal. Have a good night. The Murder Police podcast is hosted by Wendy and David Lyons and was created to honor the lives of crime victims, so their names are never forgotten. It is produced, recorded, and edited by David Lyons. The Murder Police podcast can be found on your favorite Apple or Android podcast platform, as well as at murderpolicepodcast.com, where you will find show notes, transcripts, information about our presenters, and a link to the official Murder Police podcast merch store, where you can purchase a huge variety of Murder Police podcast swag. We are also on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, which is closed caption for those that are hearing impaired. Just search for the Murder Police podcast and you will find us. If you have enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe for more and give us 5 stars and a written review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you download your podcasts. Make sure you set your player to automatically download new episodes so you get the new ones as soon as they drop. And please tell your friends.
Lock it down, Judy.